Hi, folks. I would like to play with words just a little. The coronavirus is called novel coronavirus, and that's because this form of virus is new. But when it comes to the breaking of laws, even by the law is a colloquial term for the word police. When it comes to the breaking of laws, even by the law, and also by every other forms of law enforcement authorities in Nigeria, this is not novel. I have been to a couple of African countries, for example, Kenya, Uganda, Liberia, Sierra Leone, etc. And I've also been to so many European countries. I'm in Germany right now. And in my honest opinion, I consider Nigeria developed. Here in Europe, Nigeria is not seen as a developed country because, according to them, various factors play a role in order for a country to be listed amongst other developed countries. What I would say is this, that we Nigerians have what it takes to be counted as a developed country, but the problem is that we do not live it. I mean, most Nigerians do not act it. Speaking from a medical perspective, the lockdown should be observed, and I agree with the decision of the Nigerian government for imposing restrictions due to the present COVID-19 pandemic in Nigeria, all over the world. However, watching Nigeria descend into chaos with the numbers of death of Nigerian citizens caused by the security operatives spike above the COVID-19 death cases. As of yesterday, the 17th of April, I'm starting to think if the lockdown is the solution for Nigerians.
The 18 were extrajudicial killings, but not only the police. You recall, it was not only the police that was enforcing COVID-19 regulations. About 12 were as a result of the Nigerian Correctional Services. 7 were as a result of the Nigerian Police Force. 2 were as a result of Nigerian Army. And then 1 was as a result of the task force on enforcement of COVID-19 in neighboring states. So if you sum up all that, that will give you 18.
He also said later in the discussion that the officers should be held accountable, which is something very nice. But one thing is that they always say such in Nigeria, and we the citizens, do not really know if such process is carried out. Here in Europe, for example, when such is said, such is carried out. And we citizens witness that. We watch that on TV or we read it on the paper. So we would want to see that these officers are fished out and brought to book. The citizens here, for example, can always bank on the government. And an example is no matter what happens here, you hear them say, I'd call the police, I'd call the police. You see, that's because they have this trust in their government. To my way of thinking, life is most important. Human life is most important. It is more important than a lockdown. If a lockdown will kill Nigerians instead of killing the virus, then there should be no need for a lockdown. The lockdown is meant to stop the spread of the virus, by that means protecting the lives of the people and not to kill the people. And I thought this should be clear to all security law enforcement agencies in Nigeria. You see, it is a little tough, I know, being in a state of confusion right now. The lockdown is fine, but then people are dying as a result of the lockdown, which is bad. So what do we do now? What I see is that African governments see what they do here in Europe and in America, they copy it and then they paste it in their different countries. Here in Europe, the system works in a way that different possibilities are put in place for those who lose their jobs. As a result of the pandemic, they get money, from the government to cover up their living expenses. And I do not see this happening in Africa, for example. How does the government do this in Lagos? You see, I see bread being shared and rice, where people come together, and by so doing, the social distancing is breached, and this is wrong. Here is a story which I believe you all know, the arrest of joggers in Lagos by the police during lockdown. And I think this is correct. Frog jumps is a good thing for lawbreakers, for example. And I believe they would have gained more muscles, from what they did here than their jogging. And, nobody was killed and nobody was hurt. And I think this is good. This is a nice thing in Nigeria. And this video, in this case, everyone is at fault. The shop owner for breaking the law, the policeman also broke the law. And I learned that these police officers were later arrested. Maybe that's true, but I have not seen any proof. I do not need to see any proof, but I want to be sure that it happened. Other officers need to see the proof, in order to learn from it, so they get to know that being in a uniform does not give them the right to be above the law. I expect them to know the law. Sometimes I ask myself if these officers, really went through training, where the laws are being taught. They are called law enforcement officers, please. And now to this video, the video of the day. Here is a video of the burial of the former chief of staff to the president, and my heartfelt condolences to his family. But at this point, I have a question, and my question goes out to the government. If other citizens get to lose a family member or a friend, would they be allowed to bury their loved ones during lockdown? I am just wondering, and let's assume that they will be allowed, but would they be allowed to gather friends and all close relatives to be a part of the funeral? No one can tell me that the burial ceremony we see here of the chief of staff consisted of just people, family members from the same household. And as a matter of fact, there is no sufficient distance that is kept here. And that is totally wrong. Mr. President, these are your people breaking your own law. And if the number of COVID-19 cases gets to increase in that region, the poor and the innocent ones who are at homes would suffer. Here, folks, is where a line should be drawn. No one in Nigeria, no one should be above the law. Okay, and just to chip in something, I really commend the work of this officer here.
Again, that when the Messiah Jesus was asked questions by the Pharisees about Caesar, he said to them to give that which belongs to Caesar to Caesar. When Apostle Paul spoke to the church of God that abide and worship Rome, in Romans 13 verses 1 and 2, he told them to be subject to all authorities, for they that be are ordained of God.
And this video,
and we understand clearly that the Prophet ﷺ was clear that if you are going into a city and you hear that there is a plague like corona in the city, don't go in. And if you are in the city and you heard that there is a plague or a virus, don't go out. And that may just be what the federal government and the world over have agreed, that people should stay indoor. In Mecca, the holy mosques have all been sealed. That's number one. Number two, if we look at it from the Christian perspective, the Vatican have been sealed, Israel have been sealed, and the churches have all been sealed. And most of the mosques have all been sealed. And we find that you, as an imam, who understand the Quran and the hadiths and the teachings of the Prophet, peace be upon him, have also violated. Why we are telling you this truth is because of the fact that the Quran was clear. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have said in Quran chapter 4, verses 59 and verse 60, that all ye who believe, which I think you are one of them by Islamic faith, obey Allah, obey his messenger. We will discuss with you because we have gotten so many reports about that. We thought today is Sunday, we are going around, but we finally found you again still meeting, even if we have gotten reports. So I think at this time, it will be clear that the Imam will have to come with us so that we sit with him. And when we sit with you, we'll talk with you accordingly. Officer, I think I'm okay.
So do you want me to talk on that?
No, not you. Come with us. When you come with us, we'll talk with you at the
You see, I commend the work of this officer. Unfortunately, I do not know his name. And I expect that many officers, in Nigeria, learn from him. He knows the law, he understands the books, and he's also living the law. His mode of action, his mode of communication, his mode of correction, his mode of appearance, everything is first class. There was no bloodshed, there was no bullets fired, and according to the videos that I've seen, even the law breakers themselves were thunderstruck. They were lost for words, and you know why? Because the officer commanded respect with his words. And most especially, he earned that respect. When the corona pandemic is over, I suggest that he should be awarded a prize. So folks, by all means, give all you have, because this time we have to show the world that we have what it takes to be a part of the developed countries. Join me.